And then I will
Nothing, right?
minimize this so that we can. Okay.
All right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call here. Mark is not here. John? Here. Carrie, I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna say Carrie. Carrie?
Here.
I am here. Kevin is not here.
And Kevin did send a message late today that he would not be here. I don't believe I heard from Mark, but.
Okay, and Rita is here. And vacant, we're hoping is not vacant come Friday.
Yes, so I do have, Bill Boyer is back from Florida. And I did talk to him today. And his concern was being gone a couple months in the winter time. But I did just tell him that his knowledge of the infrastructure throughout this community and what that looks like would be very valuable to us. And we can always, we've worked something out to hear off of YouTube and be able to see somebody so we can work that out. He could call as quorum from
He's
Florida.
allowed to join us virtually.
Yes.
Right.
So I think that that's totally fine. And so he's going to meet with me on Friday and we will hopefully have him appointed then and he will be able to join us.
His 9 months of knowledge will be more valuable than my 12 months, so. it'll be good. So we have confirmation on quorum.
Yes.
Did anybody we have minutes?
Yeah, you do. And I'm sorry, you guys,
Let's take a moment real quick.
yes, please take a
We
moment.
have
They're very
February and
basic.
March to go through.
Yes, absolutely. You have a lot of stuff in front of you, so.
Director Hicks, that's got a ring to it.
Did you get an agenda?
Should be able to take, you have March or you have Kevin's here.
Oh, that's true. Are you here as a class requirement?
Yes.
Okay.
You're not here because you want to be?
He's certainly here because he wants to be.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here for one of my classes.
For class?
That's my senior capstone project. Kind of like a.
Are you in Linda Conley's? One of Linda Conley's?
What capstone
Classes?
is it for?
No.
Okay.
What's your capstone?
It's for civil engineering.
Okay.
Who is your instructor?
TJ Murphy.
Okay.
Did you know you were going to get interrogated today?
I wasn't putting on it.
Got a job lined up?
What is your name, sir?
Was it?
What is your name?
Sam Whitney.
Sam Whitney.
Welcome.
Yeah.
I work for a civil engineering company. That's what I was asking.
I will tell Professor Murphy that you really were here.
Good.
You know, yes, I was just going to say you're
Survived the interrogation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe I will tell him you had some great input.
Extra credit.
You guys have any discussion on these and reading through these or?
So you will see on on March's, I do say that we're attaching. I'm going to attach this that we finished to these minutes.
Okay.
Our minutes, because it's just so much discussion, this will be attached, but it's really just,
I see you've got places to sign here.
yes, so you and I will have to, once we have approved them, we've got a few that we'll sign to put in the minute book.
Perfect.
I move to approve as written. Both sets.
Move from John to approve February 12th, 2025, March 12th, 2025. We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor. Nobody's going to be opposed. Nobody's in the audience to be opposed. So great. These have passed. Old business. Jump right into our new extension here. Do you have that? You have that pulled up on the screen as well. We have it here. Looks like.
Yeah, so you've got it over here and on this side here. And Crystal has moved to the corner because we think that maybe the mouse works better.
Okay.
in this.
I thought she was going to sit by me.
I did.
Yeah.
A couple things that I want to bring up really quickly on this is we had finalizing this in the EDA plan. John is the only one that had sent anything that he felt like just some changes on the EDA. So I don't know if you guys are okay with that. We'll talk about that, but and then the extension, I think we have covered everything that we have talked about in the last like February and March's meeting, kind of add a few things. There were some, Eric, you had sent one addition that you emailed me, and that's on here.
And that was on, the Woolard
no.
Extended.
No, Woolard Street
Yes.
extended, but you wanted to go all the way to the block there.
So we didn't have that section on there, and that's a buildable lot.
Okay.
So I suggested it all touches, we do that because if there's, and I have talked to people before about doing
What is-
projects on there.
What is the building that is also on there?
So that is IMP, right? That's Indiana Marine
Yeah,
Park.
yeah.
And that building, it's a little deceiving because we're looking at it flat. That building price sets 8 feet lower than their parking lot. That's their parking lot as well.
Toward the back.
Towards the south side of the building there. That's their parking. And they own that ground too. But that is a nice flat spot that somebody could put something in.
Is it all one lot there?
Correct.
So they would have to subdivide that.
And
If-
they'd have to sell it off.
They would either need to subdivide it, or if they were going to do something else there, expand their business or anything like that. But it is about 5 acres.
I guess it's good 5
acres.
acres or so.
Yeah.
Assuming that.
I can't see that, it's too far
It says
away.
8 acres. But that's minus
With
their 3
everything,
above, so
yeah.
probably 5 acres.
So that's why Eric had asked, he thought that back end there would be possibly something that could develop.
Yeah, even if this same company did an
And they looked at
expansion.
doing that a while back. It looked at doing a second building there.
Uh-huh.
They're in 2 locations right now. They are there and then they are next to Stu Zerker, next to Best One Tire. They're
Oh,
just
really?
south of Best One Tire, which was the old, they did the RVs there, but I can't think of who it was. But they're in 2 locations now.
Yeah.
So there was talk at one time, like, hey, how do we get it? So I don't know if they would or not, but that ground will not sit empty forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess when I was thinking about this in between our last 2 meetings, and really what we want is areas in the TIF where we can give the mayor and his staff tools to incentivize development, right? Because if you get development anyway,
There's 2 things, there's 2 ways to look at that. That is one way for sure to incentivize. The other way I would say is we also allow them to capture dollars that we can direct in a way that's sometimes harder to direct in that way because it goes through so many other
At least this is gonna be.
steps. So like
and it just still goes to the general.
it goes to the general fund. So say if we want to do sidewalks down North Wayne, I'm just saying we could improvement and do that. And it may be harder to get those funds elsewhere where we can just direct
But it's
towards
not
that. Am I saying that?
It's not
Yeah.
impossible.
Not impossible. Absolutely not impossible.
So,
Yeah.
so the intent is of the incentive is it can be a direct incentive. We are gonna pay for local public improvements to extend a utility to this building or this site so that it can be developed.
Yes.
The other thought,
Things that
more,
they couldn't otherwise afford to do.
right, the other idea is that general public improvements like sidewalks and, quality of life improvements make it easier for them to hire people, keep people, make it a nicer place for them. So it's more of an indirect benefit to the TIF as well. So you have the
Yeah.
direct,
But that second pathway is not unique to tipping.
it's not, it's just a very common source in Indiana of funds to do those kinds of improvements that may not otherwise be.
It's just another tool in our toolbox, one for incentive for redevelopment. Hey, you want to look at this? There's some issues maybe connecting to infrastructure or whatever, you're in a TIF. I think we can help you. Like there's something we can do. So it's a tool for redevelopment, but it's also a way to capture some of that increment financing to use that for local public improvements. Like Eric said, using it for sidewalks down Harcourt, Wooler, or connecting to our trail or doing something that benefits the community as a whole. if we are just looking at it as the tool to incentivize for redevelopment, absolutely. And I agree with you on that specifically, that should be kind of our main thing. But if we're capturing areas that we know are going to get us some funding, that we can use those funds for more improvement in the infrastructure or other local improvements, it all works together. So I think it's.
And really, what's the trade-off then? So that's the good. What's the trade-off?
Well, it used to be, and for good or bad, I've been doing this 25 years now. 15 years ago, when school corporations, that's why school corporations are now required by state statute to be involved in this. Because years ago, when schools were more dependent on local property taxes, there was this discussion that TIFs negatively impacted school corporations. That has changed a lot over the last 15, 20 years, in which now the state provides by pupil, not necessarily the amount of money going to school corporations is, and I'm not
It's a different mix.
It's all
it's a
about
different mix. So generally,
Yeah.
school corporations have been less concerned about TIF districts than they had been. Could also be, there's been a lot more discussion about
So
TIF and how
as far
TIF
as the
works.
school, what would the school district lose?
We're deferring money away from them.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
That was their thought.
So,
That's what it used to be.
but if it's just school districts, aren't we deferring money?
it's all taxing districts.
All taxing,
So
so
it's
like
the
the
libraries, the county, anybody who is in that little pot of
Anyone
funds.
who would have collected money from that increment.
Mhm.
Not necessarily.
Yes, that is then deferred. But remember, as Jason Silner was explaining through his process, it's not really a one-to-one. So if we're able to collect $1 of increment, that doesn't mean that dollar would have been equally distributed among those other taxing districts. It could have been that it maybe is only 75 cents of that would be distributed. And that has to do with way more complicated things than I know, circuit breaker and your levy.
Now that 75% is not year one, is what he was sharing. It's over a period of time,
Yeah.
that $1 over that 10 years, whatever it was.
But they wouldn't
it turns
even-
out 75.
Yeah, so if you would take the $1 the redevelopment collects and compare that to what is actually collected, would have been collected by each individual, it may not equal $1. So it's not a direct one-to-one
Sure. But they scale.
comparison. Yes.
But also now, and maybe this isn't new, I don't know, but we discussed, I think with Jason, or maybe it was you, Crystal, that we can decide to use these funds for workforce development things, or things at the library, things at public safety, things with the school. Like, there are items that we can use the funds to help benefit those taxing units.
Aren't there items that you can use the general fund for? I guess that's what I don't understand.
Yeah, okay.
If the money just goes to, if the development's gonna happen anyway, and these are the two scenarios.
Right.
The development's gonna happen anyway. The money goes to the general fund.
It doesn't go to the general fund.
We don't get any of.
It doesn't. That's what we're
No.
saying. I'm going to make, this is way off. 20% is going to go to the schools, 5% is going to go to the libraries, and 30%. And now we're saying, no, it's all 100% coming here. The schools really need 75% of it. So we should be able to give it to them, where they can't do that because it doesn't go to a general fund. It's already split. That's what you're saying.
Mhm.
It's
been
predetermined.
pre-allocated.
It's pre-allocated. A percentage can go to general fund. But it's all, doesn't mean we can't follow that allocation to pretty close if we want,
Well,
but we don't have to. And that's where it's kind of like now you can spend it as you want to spend it.
And I guess the beauty of having a redevelopment commission that hopefully is out of the political fray, having decisions that are looking maybe a little bit broader, not having to worry about getting reelected every 4 years, you can establish those partnerships with those other entities. We will have to talk to those overlapping taxing districts during this expansion process so that they understand what's happening. And then they can also come back and say, hey, Retha, we see that the TIF district now includes one of our library branches. We'd really like to make sure we have good sidewalk access. Is that something that you can help fund through the TIF? So it's about
Just from
opening those
basic
up.
property taxes or
Yeah.
development, they don't win in that.
No, and I think another way to look at it, if you have the water department and sewer department, they're each gonna get a percentage right now, however you guys allocate that. But if one of them needs a truck and the other one doesn't need a truck, you see it, there's infighting between agencies. But if that money comes here, we can take that little bit that was gonna go to
And
the
they're
sewer
just fighting
and make
towards
sure.
us.
Then they're mad at us, which is okay, right?
We can be targeted.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would trust us to do a better job of it at reallocating
No,
the existing.
but that's where they put those requests in, yeah. Something else that could potentially play into this, and nobody knows this, but as they are at the state level, talking to somebody again here recently, they're relooking at all of our property taxes.
They are yes.
And that will more
Legislators.
than likely, the way it sounds, will be a different mix where commercial property tax will, right now, I don't know what it is, residential is making up 40%, which it shouldn't be making up as much, so they'll adjust the commercial up. And a project like this that we're talking, they expand, that has been common in our county we're just gonna give them a tax abatement. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's the only
incentivize
tool
them.
they currently have.
Yeah, right.
That's not the only one, but that's one we always go to.
The main one.
That's the
yeah.
go-to tool.
So I
Go to
could
who?
see that now that tax abatement is gonna be worth a lot more. If property taxes go up, it's gonna be more incentive, but it also means that the county's missing even more
Well, and
of that.
business, personal property is getting theirs, and we just had this
Correct.
conversation beforehand. So the business, personal property that sometimes they get abatements on,
Not the
or
real
sometimes they
property.
bond against, or because we take personal property tax on equipment, like maybe
So I've been
a
in
huge
projects where we
piece
have.
of equipment at one of our
equipment,
industries.
And they're like, say they do big, it could even be their inventory management system could get an abatement on it. That's not real property, that's that personal property. It's the same as the equipment and everything else. And now they're differencing. between those two.
Legislation is really cutting some of that. And so for us, we get a small portion of the taxes, property taxes that are paid inside city limits. The city does. So for us to have this increment financing, we get that portion as a redevelopment commission, then we can disperse those funds as we see fit for needs of whatever local public improvement. We have that ability to say, hey, we see that the school is looking at this, or the school can come to us and ask. We have that ability to disperse that in a way that benefits those taxing units that aren't maybe going to benefit right now. Like the superintendent right now says his money is in butts in the seats. Quote, that's how I'm getting funding from the state right now, is just butts in the seats. If we're not creating more housing, we're not getting more people here. His school's not growing. If it's going other places, they're not getting the funding that they used to get. So he in the school, and I think Kevin he had mentioned that like they look at the TIF district differently now, because if we can use it as an incentive to do things for multifamily housing or better infrastructure to get better housing or to do different things, it only benefits them. Whereas they used to look at it as
If it
that
gets butts in
negative.
the seat.
Because if it gets in butts in the seats, yes. And there are developments that will happen with or without being in a TIF district. There are developments that will happen inside our TIF district that aren't going to ask us for anything, that don't need anything from us. If they're in that TIF district and we can collect some of that increment financing.
Let's take this to an extreme. Why don't we tip the whole town?
Okay, Mr. Pittman, so that's brings
I'm
up.
trying to,
Yeah.
I get it.
Mhm.
A school district used to be a trade-off and it is no longer. But there's always a trade-off. And so what is it?
So
We have to, then our job becomes that much harder. Then we
guess
have
it's
to get the
harder
numbers
because-
right.
Because we essentially have power over this money to spend,
I would look at
whereas I
it.
would not call us by any means any kind of experts.
No, I would
So,
look
but
at it
remember,
like
you're only getting
diversifying if
the
you're diversifying your stocks.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy, but I would say it's that way. We want a percentage that we can use as we want to use.
Yeah.
You don't want to
So
just
it
have it
gives-
all that
It
way.
effectively gives the administration more freedom.
What it does.
You know, we are here at the pleasure of the mayor, so.
So, but always remember, so right now, according to the information we pulled off, there is $718 million worth of assessed value in Angola.
Mhm.
That is set.
Yep.
When your TIF's established, that's set. So anything that's there now is still gonna be distributed like it is now. It's only the increment you're gonna be able to collect.
Sure.
So it's that little bit on top. And so the real key is how do you best invest that little bit that you have to grow the whole pot? That's the whole concept behind redevelopment commissions. And I'll tell you, you in this plan you have not identified any properties to acquire.
True.
But one of the very important tools that a redevelopment commission has is it can acquire property via tax sale or anything like that. And it does not have, you have to publish it for availability, but you can sell it at below appraised value, which the rest of the city cannot, to incentivize development.
Okay, so man.
Yeah. So that is a really important tool that you may not have anything on your plate right now, but having a brownfield site or,
Doesn't exist anywhere else.
yeah, the redevelopment commission is the sole body in the state of Indiana that has that power.
The city can acquire properties.
They have to sell it at the average of 2 appraisals.
Correct. They have to sell it. That's the difference.
Yeah, you have the right to transfer it to adjacent property owners. You have the right to sell it for less than market value in exchange for a development project. You have the right, the city would have to acquire the tax certificates. They can transfer it then to you. If the city were to hold that tax certificate, they've got a couple things. First of all, they have to declare it excess and unnecessary property. Then they can sell it at the average of 2 appraisals. But the whole idea is the commission has this ability to incentivize, whether it's putting in infrastructure, it's facilitating the redevelopment of a dilapidated
That
parcel.
all falls under the incentivization
Yep.
envelope. Right.
So those are really, and again, larger or other more established redevelopment commissions, that is a major role that they play, is cleaning title and getting properties back out for redevelopment.
Another benefit that nobody talks about, what you think about, we're forcing the city to operate on a less of a budget. And then like at that, when that time's up, that tips over, they get a big payday at the end of that. Because now all that incremental increase is coming to them. So like say you're missing out on
The city sets
that.
the levy.
Mhm.
They do, but they're not.
They set their own levy, so it doesn't really force them to do anything because they set the levy.
If they need something.
No,
I think the levy is, to increase your levy, it's
the way they're doing it now is
it's a big deal.
they're changing it. That's the legislation now, is that every entity will have to go through their own referendum to fight. The library would, the school would, whatever. They're looking at changing that now. But anyways, I'm just saying, like, they have to be good stewards of the money they do have. And then all of a sudden one day,
Sure, but that's always the case.
it is, but then one day it should be. It's all over, the tips over, and it's like, bam, there's a huge payday. Because those are now those are all.
Maybe minus
in.
depreciation.
Mhm. And again, it's not a
No.
one-for-one
No,
match.
they're collecting. So they start collecting what we've been collecting, now they get it collected directly.
A portion of it. Because it's still your
They get-
levy sets the top.
They get the portion they would have had all
Yes.
along, is what I'm saying.
Or-
And I think that we look at this 2 different ways that, and we talked about this, I know, in prior weeks, but we set our TIF area for areas that we definitely can incentivize that we know will not get redeveloped without us. They need something. And we also set it because there's some funds that we just want to collect because we want to be able to use those for
Right.
the
It's those
infrastructure.
2 things that I'm trying to differentiate.
Okay.
And I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
There's
You're
always
trying to
trade-offs.
understand the benefit of doing the parcels that we're just collecting for,
Yeah.
to collect. I don't know that there is, your question on, is there a downside?
Like I have a
don't
hypothetical
Think
downside.
so. Yeah, I don't think so. And we were supposed to meet with, the auditor today to talk about like the assessed value and what it's already assessed at and what makes sense for us and what areas are, maybe should we eliminate, should we not in that original TIF, but she had to cancel at the last minute, so we weren't able to sit and talk with her, but we will do that soon as well. So I don't think that any of this is done lightly because we look at all of these things before it's finalized, it all comes on the table. So I know,
And there are 4 public meetings
Yeah.
associated
Yeah,
with
the
the,
whole process takes like a
Yeah.
year.
but there are 4 opportunities as well as required notifications to all overlapping taxing districts that this is happening. So it's not happening in a vacuum. As well as, I think your initial question was, is why don't we just TIF it all? You legally can, but the mayor and I, we had this conversation before because the legal advisor said, smaller areas, sometimes just TIF the whole darn town.
Make the whole area an economic development area.
But I think there's a legal and then there's political or just kind of community appetite.
Correct.
And
Although you said just a minute ago, it separates the political from the
well, no,
fiscal.
but
there is
the
a political
mayor,
aspect
I mean,
and that's why I'm trying to understand it
yeah,
now before we get in.
so the operations should be apolitical, but you have to get the council's approval on this process. That's where the political comes in, is because they have to allow you to establish this area. And so because in my mind, this is exactly where I went first was, okay, how much of the city are we actually talking about in this expanded area? And it's about 37% of all the parcels or all the area within the city. So we're
By acreage.
by acreage. And about 33% of the current assessed value. Now, again, that's set. You don't, only the stuff that's already in the TIF, are you collecting any of that?
Right.
But right now, just to give you an idea, it's about 1/3 of the cities involved in this,
Okay,
whether
you
it's
said there was about-
area-wide,
Current assessed value, 300 million,
718.
718 million.
Mhm.
Okay.
Of
That's
the
a-
parcels that were.
It's-
So, okay,
there's lots of
750
zeros.
million, 250
About
million.
22,
Um,
220.
so, I mean, hypothetical, this is the only downside that I could come up with, right? And just trying to think it through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hypothetically, 750 million total assessed value, 250 million goes into the TIF, right? A 70, it's not by dollar. I was just saying 1/3 by dollar.
The increment.
The
So
increment.
none of that money is in your,
Correct, correct,
Correct.
Yeah.
correct. Like,
It's what TIF,
correct.
it's TIF.
okay, a $75 million project comes along,
Mhm.
okay? If it happens anyway, outside the TIF, the assessed value goes up by 10% for the city,
Mhm.
right? So that's significant. At a fixed levy,
Mhm.
everybody else's tax rate goes down by 10%.
or however they work their magic. But yes,
Mhm.
there's a direct correlation.
Yeah. And so a $75 million project would actually result in a 10% tax rate decrease for everyone else.
If it's in the TIF and if the incentive to get the
No, if it's
project,
outside the TIF.
Say that again.
but who said they would come if you weren't able to provide them an incentive?
No,
Or
you're just
if the
saying they
tax-
can't.
Assuming that they are no matter
Yeah,
what.
These
like
are the
if
two
they
scenarios I
can't
was.
outright.
Say it again now, so you're saying?
So you have $750 million assessed value.
Yep.
Without a TIF.
Mhm.
New $75 million project comes into town.
Yep,
That adds $75 million to the assessed value.
yep.
The city does a great job. They hold the levy fixed from year to year. And so now everybody's tax rate goes down by 10%
Yeah,
because
I think
now the
it's not
assessed
that bad.
value
Quite
is
closer to that.
825 million.
or closer to 8 or 9%, but yeah. Because it's
Okay.
spread over the 75
Yeah,
too,
roughly.
but yeah. Okay,
And so everybody's tax rate goes down by 9%,
uh-huh,
right? That's a benefit to everyone else when that $75 million project comes in. Now,
Yep.
if it goes into the TIF, then and they keep the levy the same, then everybody's tax rate stays exactly the same. And the city has extra money to spend for the TIF district the following year.
I think I do.
That would be correct in what you're saying.
Yes, I think that would be correct. And so when you look at it,
Yeah. So
you can look at it as a downside or a
And I
positive.
think that's what he was, I think that's what he was
Right.
trying to say
Yes.
on that.
Mhm.
I think he did a better job of
That's my
saying
perception of the trade-off
that.
that we're talking about. So, however, if the $75 million project would never have come into town, then we should have totally TIF'd it Because now the city has extra money,
Yeah.
everybody's tax base is the same as it was or everybody's taxes are the same as it was before. And the city has extra money to build their infrastructure out and make life in general better for everybody.
The other thing that you're not taking into account is that $75 million project, what is it costing the city to house that in the city as well? Because if your tax base stays the same, there's still a cost. You bring something like that to town, it's bringing people to town, there's infrastructure costs. So they have to come up with that cost
To maintain
somewhere.
it.
So if you don't change a levy, you're only collecting the same amount. I understand what you're saying. So yeah, it may lower everybody, but now you got to maintain whatever that brought to town.
Right, which means that's even worse though, because if it goes into the TIF and the maintenance of that does not
No,
get paid for by the TIF because the TIF people don't know what they're doing, then everybody else's taxes actually go up to pay for the stuff that's being squirreled away in the TIF. And that's a disadvantage.
It could be. You're right. Absolutely, it could
I
be.
wouldn't say that because
But-
if the city's not maintaining it, they're gonna have to increase the levy anyways. If it's in or out of the TIF, if there's not enough money going around, they gotta change the levy.
Well, if the TIF doesn't make enough money to pay for it, then
Or if,
everybody else
even
has
if
to
it's not in the TIF, they're gonna have to raise the levy if they don't get enough money coming in.
true. But
So I guess, I don't think it's
so
an
I was
advantage.
trying
And
to-
if
I
you're
was trying-
looking at the whole
I was trying to keep things simple.
big picture,
Yeah. That's the problem.
if you're looking at the whole big picture, you know, if a development comes
But that
in,
is a trade-off that we have to conscientiously.
you're absolutely correct. But most communities and most economic development directors will tell you that people want to live in a community where there's more amenities, there's higher taxes because it's paying for those amenities.
No, no,
And
no. The first part was true, the
Yes.
second part is not.
well, but it is.
They are
People
correlated
move to
because we know we have to
communities
take one or the
that
other.
have higher taxes because they know they're going to get the amenities that they really truly want. Yard waste pickup, their streets are going to be plowed, potholes are going to be filled, sidewalks are
You're
going to be
talking to a
filled.
guy who used to live in Milwaukee. Well, my property taxes were a factor of 3 higher than when I moved here.
Mhm.
And the amenities were the same.
Yeah. So
No one wants that.
no, absolutely not. But you want to live where you know you're getting those amenities. Most people do.
Yeah, and I think people want to live where they're getting good value for their dollar.
Exactly. And so a $75 million project coming in automatically means probably more jobs. You know, it means it's a big deal for everybody. So if it increases that tax because now we have higher traffic and heavier vehicles and things that have to be maintained, and yes, if we are doing our job and managing those funds and making those improvements that help benefit in all of those areas, I don't know that there's a downside, but I don't completely disagree with you. I don't think that I think it all averages out if everybody's playing the role that they're supposed to play. It works. Am I right or wrong?
I will tell you from a developing side, and this will sound crazy, but a lot of times development doesn't happen and a city stays stagnant because you can't get that public-private partnership. That's a lot of the reason cities stay where they are. The public doesn't want to work with private, and that's really where we're at. And this is in a backwards way of saying this. This is kind of giving the city an opportunity to be that private investor.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's the incentivization.
That's really what it is.
And I
And that
have
stuff
no issue with that.
doesn't
right?
grow otherwise. And I could argue if you're not growing, yes, taxes go with, I get it. But if you're not growing, what are you doing? You're going the opposite direction more times than not. So it could end up costing that tax basis more anyways in the end, because as people leave, you still have to maintain that infrastructure that you have. So it could still cause your costs to go up. So I mean, you can look at it any direction. I'm not agreeing or
Yeah,
disagreeing.
I'm not
just saying-
arguing about the cost though. Because the costs go up, they go down with development regardless of whether it's in the TIF or not, right?
Correct.
I'm arguing about the trade-off of having a TIF versus not having a TIF.
So are you concerned about some of the parcels that can you zoom that TIF map back out? Are you concerned that possibly we've included parcels
Well-
that are necessary to be in the TIF? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, how many of the parcels are in the TIF that are already going to be developed? Like are already on track? I don't know that there are many. Did we include the TJ Maxx
I
one?
think that's the only
We
one.
included TJ Maxx and we also included some outlets around Menards that we might, once we figure out how all of that works. So we
What
included
about-
TJ
have
Maxx,
those-
we included that
The
outlet. to
outlots,
rent.
have they been sold to anybody? Is somebody going
No.
moving in there?
No,
There's been no permits pulled on
So-
it.
there's been no permits pulled on anything.
Right, so
There's no
there,
guarantee
we,
either.
there, we should give the mayor some tools to go after some people to sell those lots and.
Yes. If we can say you are it, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's really the parts that are already under development that I'm questioning. And I don't think there are very many.
No.
I
The only,
think TJ Maxx is the
the
only
only
one.
other one there's conversation about is the area just west of the monument and south that we've had longer discussions about. There's a project that would like to come to town there.
But I thought they needed something.
But they want our allocation. and
They
want
need that
to be
allocation in order to
yeah.
come to there. So I'm saying,
So that's an incentive case. That's a
Correct.
no-brainer.
Right, and that TIF would be
For me, that's a
necessary for that.
Yep.
The only other one,
oh,
yeah.
there is another, I guess, what do they call themselves? The Smith, JICI group,
Saranova.
Saranova has already started. They
But
don't
they
have
don't
anybody
have
coming to
anything.
town. They're moving dirt, but they don't have anybody signed, to my knowledge. And so that's
They have
something that's
one
different.
consumer credit union, but we have not, that
We've
has
not
just been,
asked. Nothing has been
No.
asked
No.
from us at that point in time. So they're moving forward without any incentives.
go ahead, Carolyn.
So does it make sense? Like, we know, I say that lightly, but things on West Maumee Street need some attention like yesterday. And so those things that are under construction are already going to kind of give that little burst that maybe we can get started sooner rather than later on those projects. Is that reasonable to think? Because we can,
That the allocation could come to us sooner.
I would say,
as opposed to like bare ground that we don't have anybody yet, it might be 2 years before that something goes there and the assessment rises. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Probably closer to 3, because remember, everything's a year in the rear.
Right.
So
For
even
tax
though,
purposes, yeah.
once it's fully assessed, you still have a year to wait before you get any increment.
So that's where I see the benefit of including some of these ones that are already under construction. That's just my personal perspective.
Mr. Banker, do you have any thoughts?
No. I see both sides,
Okay.
but I don't, I actually kind of agree with both sides. So it's really a tough situation.
It's a trade-off.
It really is.
Make the choice.
There will always be one.
Yeah, and
So-
and you're right. If there are infrastructure projects to be done that we think these need money and this is an easier way than just raising the levy to get that money, then we should, I'd have no hesitation about doing that, right?
And I mean, I totally agree with Retha. Like, I've lived here my whole life. I mean, mostly in Pleasant Lake, but here in Angola too, that, you know, I want to see us have those advantages, not only for me, but for my kids, for their friend, you know, that it's going to continue to be a town where people want to be, you know? And it's
And
going
if
to
we
take some
utilize
investment.
these funds for things
Right.
that help with the infrastructure, that we can grow.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, we all know that right now we're having issues with NIPSCO. And some developments have turned away because of the costs with NIPSCO right now. So is it feasible that, you know, if at some point we could utilize these funds for that? Yeah. I mean, it is. And so getting more development, getting more activity in town, getting more
Do we have a
housing.
list of high urgency projects that we would like to see done? Because I think that kind of sways like, oh, this is already, we will recover increment from this one. What are we gonna do with it? Right? Because that always sounds a lot better than we're just collecting this.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's a requirement in your plan is to identify projects that you would use the TIF money for. So
I
it's,
remember a lot of broad language in there. Were there any
there's-
particular?
yep, it's actually one of the last
And
things.
it is supposed to be fairly broad, but
Yeah.
we can't.
Because we don't want to limit it.
No more water.
No, exactly. But the water line, some of the, you know.
So page 3, it's in bold. On this one, this guy.
Oh.
It's in bold with lots of XXXs in there. Because that has to be decided once we get the allocation area set. Lisa and I will have to meet with the other departments to say, in this area, what would be the local public improvements that you can anticipate? You do need to make a rational nexus between I'm collecting money and I have something I need to spend it on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's easier to sell if you say, these are high urgency
Right.
projects that I.
So the process of this would be that, once we say, I think we're good with this, yes, let's do that. And I guess, Crystal, I'm gonna throw some questions in with my statements on here, but, do we as a commission vote to say, we're good with this TIF district? Or do we send it to our attorney, which I'll talk about in a minute, our redevelopment attorney, and that starts.
Both. What you're saying is it's just timing.
Okay.
So if everybody's relatively okay with this area, then we have to start getting to the details. We need to get that legal description. We want to have the attorney from Barnes and Thornburg take a look at it, make sure the plan itself meets all the statutory requirements, that he doesn't see any problems with the area itself. The first time you officially say, this is the TIF area, is in that declaratory resolution. That's what kicks this whole process off. You are declaring, we have the intention to establish this TIF under this plan, and this is what we're gonna do with it. Then we go to the plan commission, they say, yes, this plan is consistent with our comprehensive plan. Then we go to the common council, who says, we agree with you, this is a great incentive. Then we come back at the end, and any of those 3 meetings at that point, you can make minor changes to the plan itself.
So do we meet
That's-
with our other departments, our engineering, our water, our wastewater before?
Yes, because we have to fill in that number
This
before
is
it goes to the
done.
declaratory resolution. And at that point, anything that's come up, so again, you've had 3 public meetings. There could be people who come in and say, you know, whatever, we think you should add this parcel, we think you should take this parcel out, we think you should add this project. So any of those 3 meetings, you can get modifications to the plan. Then the confirming resolution is when it's set in stone. This is what we're doing.
And Baker Tilly has to come and do like an assessment report, and our taxing units come to that. So the school, we invite them. Yeah. They don't necessarily have to come, but the schools, the libraries, whoever is included in that will be at that meeting with Jason Semler to say, here's the assessment. This is what we
They're
think.
all, so the public hearing is held at the declaratory resolution.
Okay.
You hold a legal public hearing that says, we are starting this process. When you go to plan commission, again, it's a public meeting and they may have public comment, but I don't believe it's an official public hearing. Same thing with the common council. So you'll have an ordinance passed at that point, and then you
Our ordinance needs 3 readings.
and then
by
you
council.
end it at the end and say, ta-da, we're done. And then it gets recorded as official. That's when all the parcels, then now, if you look at a tax bill for a property that's in your current TIF, it will have a little number associated. It will say TIF number. That doesn't happen until your confirming resolution occurs, and then it's officially done.
Maybe you answered John's question and I missed it, but his question, I think, is do we currently have any high priority projects identified that have to be, am I phrasing that right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do we have?
So the only one that I can think of for myself without, and since we haven't met with every department to say, what do you guys think, or what are your projects high priority? Would be possibly helping with the lead water line removal that the state's requiring us to do. So helping the water department, helping with that.
Is that in this area?
That's in that west.
Lead water lines.
Yes.
Is the lead in the copper bracing, or it's not lead lines?
It's lead lines.
Lead
Service line.
Service lines that we still have that our water superintendents say aren't really causing any issues, but the state believes that they are, and they're wanting us to get rid of them and replace all that. So we're
Mainly
working on
down-
it slowly.
Mainly down West Maumee.
Maybe, yes. which is how we block that area off. So that's one that I can think of is some infrastructure upgrades in that downtown area. And then the other one is possibly relocation of the trail around the Serenova project, which is another one that I think could be happening sooner rather than later. So I'm sure you all are aware that NDOT will be coming through in 2026. We're relocating water line on North Wayne, and we're doing sidewalks down some section of North Wayne that do not have sidewalks now. And so
The railroad tracks.
I don't know that we're going that far. I can't, Amanda has that map. I'll have to look at it again, but down by like the Culvers area and some of that area that there's no sidewalk. But I can't remember where they're starting and where they're ending. But so that is happening. And if we need to possibly do something with the trail to kind of line up with, if there's something there, but without specifically talking to departments, Mark, I don't know that I know. I mean, those are just things that I'm thinking
That's our
of.
preliminary list. Right?
Yes, that's,
You'll have, like we just talked, but you didn't talk about this, but like even your funds to do your wayfinding signs could come from this.
yes.
And that's something that
So I
doesn't have a line item,
recently,
like it's like, hey, where's our trails? What are we doing? That costs money and where does that come from?
recently reached out to NDOT about, hey, I'd like to do some signage to say, hey, there's public parking lots here. There's a public parking, people complain all the time. They drive through town. The only thing they see is the quadrants. They do not know that we have public parking lots on the side streets behind. They have no idea. I want to do some signs, but because we're on state federal highway, both directions, I have to go through NDOT on that. And so reaching out to them and saying, what can I do? How can I direct people to our public restroom? How can I get them here? And so, yes, wayfinding signage, and I didn't think about that being a part of the TIF, but it could be. Yeah, absolutely. It's in that district. So again, I don't know that we have super high priority things, and I might talk to a department, Mark, and they might tell me that, yes, you do, we need this, but there are definitely projects that I'm in my dream list of like sidewalk down Wooler Street and some things that I would love to get started on sooner rather than later. But once we talk to departments, maybe my stuff changes and they veto me and they have better projects and more high priority with infrastructure or other things. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I would say that there are some significant projects that we could utilize funds pretty quickly.
Once this thing happens, who decides where the money goes? Yeah, okay.
It's only on your shoulders and
Well,
yours and yours.
within the limits of the law and your plan.
Sure.
I mean, there are guardrails on
But
it.
then you also have the other committee that's actually makes that final. Like we go to them before it comes back to us, the economic development.
That's only for a bond. You have sole control over
Okay, it's only
your
the
TIF
bond side.
revenue.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, so, and the reason
We'll just
you're,
tell them where you live. It's fine.
and the only reason you're involved in the bond at all is because you are pledging your TIF
Yeah.
revenue. So
Yeah.
you're, again, you have sole control over those dollars.
And is it disbursement from TIF or entering into a bond that starts that clock, a 25-year?
The actual, what
bond.
they call, any sort of obligation.
If we borrow money.
So I will bring this up really quickly. I sent you guys, I think, the engagement letter from Barnes and Thornburg, the attorney, and their stance. So this book that I'm also going to hand out to whoever wants it, this is a 2024 redevelopment handbook. The name on here is Thomas Pittman, Barnes and Thornburg. So we had a meeting. He was coming in to bring us some of these. And quite honestly, I just thought, well, I'm going to bring this up to see if they know someone that could be a redevelopment attorney or work us through this project, because I thought I can't probably afford them, but I would love to ask. So I did in the meeting, and they're so knowledgeable, literally actually wrote the handbook. And he said, we'll do that for you. Absolutely. We can do this. And I don't know if that dollar amount was in that engagement, but $15,000. That's not what I was expecting. I
That was
was
an estimate, correct?
expecting.
No, it's a flat fee.
That's a flat fee. Now, I will add this, like the Baker's Hilly fees do not come out of that.
It was a flat fee with adders.
Yeah. Yes. So if we have to do a separate allocation area for for the Gale Street project, if that Gale Street project happens and we have to do a separate allocation area, there would be a separate economic development agreement. That fee, that's not included in this 15,000. This area right now, this agreement, this area, our public meetings, everything we're doing right now is included in that $15,000.
If any other travel here will be on top of that, the way that reads.
So yes,
Reimbursables, yeah.
All
reimbursables, yes.
reimbursable, so it's what it is.
We're gonna try to do,
Correct.
calls.
I get it, that's, I'm just saying,
We're gonna-
so just so we're all aware,
Yeah.
it's 15,000 plus,
Yes.
which is, I still think is fine, I mean.
I thought was really good. And again, certain economic, other agreements, things that we might have to utilize them for, but it's what they do. It's how they do it. And so what we would need to do.
Before we
If you-
do that, Aretha, can we get, sorry, I'm gonna go back. I just want to make sure we're moving forward. Are we, knowing now that this is not a final, I want to go through this whole business here so we can keep moving.
Yes, please do.
So we know this is not really final. Do we have anything discussion that says we just might as well take it off of there now, or we might as well add it now because we don't want to do anything with it? Does anybody have any further discussion on
And it's clear
the TIF map that we have?
those red blobs are currently in your TIF and they will be removed from this new iteration.
Yes.
Because one is a church that's not collecting anything, and the other one's a swamp ground, and one's a mobile home.
Angola Gardens.
So any discussion on that, or can we move forward and say we're happy with that?
So yes, the added area is everything in green. So we talked about, are we okay adding that area on the other side of Love's?
All the way to the north.
If you guys want to remove TJ Maxx out of that, I mean, like, you tell us now, because I would like to get this finalized and say, do we feel like there's something we're missing that we need to add? Do we feel like we need to remove anything? Whatever you guys think. And again, we were hoping to have had the conversation with the county auditor before the meeting to talk some about the assessed value of some of these. And that didn't happen. So we're going to try to do a Teams or something with her soon. But if you guys are looking at this and you see some problem areas, now's the time, because I would love to finalize this map.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that we move forward with this. Otherwise, we're gonna sit
Where we're
here
at.
and
Yeah.
beat this
I think-
horse to
I think
death.
it's got the right mix of stuff that pays off soon and stuff that.
I think the question is, what do you do with TJ Maxx? You leaving it in the TIF?
My thought is you leave it in the TIF.
We can take it out later if it meets a lot of resistance, but if you want money quickly, you need a little bit of stuff that's already in process.
Especially if, is that one of those parcels that we want a trail connection?
Yes, I mean, they would have one. They would have
Yes. And then you guys will see on that, just east of TJ Maxx, that corner. It's like the smoke shop right now. The mayor asked that we add that in. Here's
Max is here, yes?
just the
Correct.
one in the middle, yes.
So right in front of Applebee's to the,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the smoke shop?
that's the
Yes.
smoke shop.
So here's my only thought on that. I have two thoughts on it, and the mayor asked us to add it. One is, if the smoke shop were to go away at some point and somebody wanted to develop that lot, getting to infrastructure because of where the sewer runs, we could actually benefit them and help with that. But where their drive is right now, coming off of Wendell Jacob, a new development, we would not allow that drive. And INDOT probably would not allow that, but we would say that access is too close to that intersection. So would they have to maybe somehow connect into Applebee's or, somehow do something else if they wanted to develop that corner? I think that corner is a great possibility. Would they need to do something?
It is.
Well, it's lower than Applebee's, but it's not lower than North Wayne. My other thought would be really, that property's not worth anything. Like, it really, I know what you're saying, but it's not accessible. So I could see that too as, hey, we decide we want to acquire that property so nobody else ever goes in there and we clean it up and it doesn't look like it does. So that would be my reason for taking, not
Okay.
because there's ever going to be any increased tax.
So the green area that is just to the east of it, there on the other side of Applebee's or the south of Applebee's, that is another outlot for Meyer that has not been sold. Nothing has been a platted outlot so you could technically somehow do something with that And TIF funds could possibly be used to help that.
What's the carve out in the middle?
That is,
No, it's
it's a,
Or is it NIPSCO
it's a GTE owned,
or phone company, somebody else?
yes.
Okay.
The other area, that's the small lot. The other area is owned by Meyer and is going to house the TJ Maxx sign. And probably nothing else could be developed in that. So the area to the north of that box where that's highlighted right now is the GTE. The other one is where the TJ Maxx sign is going to sit. And so we can either keep that in or we can take it out. I do not care. I asked them to highlight it because the mayor asked me and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it, but I'm on the fence either way. So we can remove it. We can keep it, whatever you guys think.
My opinion is just keep it in there.
My gut tells me is it seems like a redevelopment potential because we're not in great shape.
We're undeveloped.
Yeah.
That said, if you have an interest in acquiring it, you should put it on the list
I don't know
now.
that we have that interest at all. I'm just saying like,
I think that ultimately,
worth anything.
the highest and best use of this property is some sort of public infrastructure.
I would agree with that. Green
Whether
space
it's,
of some sort.
it's green space, it's stormwater
Trailhead, I don't know
retention,
what it
it's
is.
something. So
Or if it's somehow connected with the out, yeah, I mean, there's something,
Yeah, I just let it.
drainage, I don't know, yes.
if there's, but I guess what I'm saying right now is that this whole shebang is gonna have to be redone to acquire that one piece of property. If you think there's not going to be much,
I don't want to acquire it, yeah,
are you sure?
yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you the mayor will not want to take it off of tax roll until there's a plan. That's just the reality of it. So we don't have a plan. I'd leave it on there. And I know we have to go through it all again, but I mean, you know what, we got 37% and 33% or 30% of tax roll. We got pretty lucky. Like we nailed that in my opinion. I don't know how that happened, but that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I think I heard a motion to leave this map like it is.
Okay, I'm with you.
I would actually second it.
Okay, perfect. And I think I heard that we can move forward with this like it is. That's what I heard.
Yes.
Okay,
And then also on the old business too, we have to talk about this here.
the plan, yeah, so that's the next
I
thing
think
on there.
I know I read through it. I didn't really have any comments. You had some comments.
Comments to her, they're just wordsmithing.
Okay.
And
perfect.
yes, his comments were pretty basic. And do we want to name it John said Angola Economic Development Area? I mean, do we have another name? We have to name this something. So if we want to,
My hesitation, I don't know. My hesitation, we are redevelopment. I get it. How much, and that comes back to the original question, how much development is here? There is development available. A lot of it's redevelopment. I don't know. Like, I don't care what we call it, I guess.
It has to be called economic development area.
Okay.
That's because you're
Yeah.
not establishing a redevelopment area,
So
you're
you just call it,
establishing.
you added Angola to it?
Angola,
That's
yeah.
pretty impressive.
John got really
Marketing
wizard. Do we want to just say?
I started brainstorming, I came up with like 50 and narrowed it down. The pros and
Had
cons.
lots of fun.
And then that one, the Angola.
Two, did you?
That's how I brainstorm everything.
I think it's a phenomenal idea.
Okay, so
Keep it simple.
Angola Economic Development Area.
I like it.
And
And if you add to it, it's still called.
Yeah.
The Angola. And we will, when we add, since we are adding to the existing, does that rename the existing area?
That is
I
a
don't even know
question,
what the
I think.
existing
It was awful
So-
name, so we're just gonna
I-69.
say that we're gonna.
oh yeah, the I-69.
Yeah, so I think and this is one of those questions, we shot an email off to Arns and Thornburg already saying, just to confirm, we can use the money in this TIF to do this expansion. We think we can, but let's let the legal guy
Okay.
tell us that. I think in the resolution, you have to say formerly known as blah and amended to
Okay.
be called blah, just in the legal mumbo jumbo so that you can use those funds.
And, another question, and I don't want to go down a rabbit trail, but if we do all this, we get this approved, are we able to use those funds that we're collecting now for this allocation area so we can get that done quicker and start collecting sooner?
Yes, that's the plan. That was one of the reasons.
Okay, that's all I need to
Okay,
know.
so I
Recommending
have an
doing
answer
that.
from the attorney.
Okay.
So the attorney question was, Oh, she didn't include my question. Basically, it said, can the, do you remember, the legal expenses,
Financial,
yeah, we went through everything that we're gonna be spending money on, and I said, I just want to verify that it can be paid with the existing TIF funds, because we're expanding the TIF. And they just sent back and said, yes, the below described expenses can be paid from TIF funds. Okay.
just, and that was one important thought in whether you establish a new or you expand the existing. Because if you were just creating a brand new one, you'd have to come up with those funds from city dollars.
Okay, but my question, look, we're doing like 225 annually or something like that. My question is, we can, if we were to go and incentivize this group that wants to go down Gale Street, and that agreement's gonna look like, hey, you guys are on the hook for the dollars, but we're gonna pay you back as we get the, can we draw from our 225 or whatever we're doing now? Can we use that to pay it back quicker?
Depends on how you do the development agreement.
Okay.
So the
But as an
allocation.
option, I mean, it's something we could consider. We don't need to go
It's
through the
available
details.
for that purpose.
Potentially,
Yes, so this area
Okay,
is
that's what I wanted
within,
to ask, yeah.
so that area is within the area you've established, so
Yep.
it's eligible. How you choose to use it though is that.
And what the mayor
negotiation.
had initially talked to them about was 90% allocations. So,
Correct,
yes,
but it's 90% of that allocation area.
Mhm.
yes,
But I'm
of that
saying if we
only
were-
specific
If we want to
area.
just get off the books and be done with it, we could. Okay, perfect. Let's keep going. So we're
Okay,
through that.
so
I feel good.
we're good with that. And then if you guys are okay with Mr. Pittman's engagement letter, the standards on that at 15,000, there will be some extra billable with some other things, but if you're okay with that, then I would like to say that, Eric, we have to decide, and I wrote down what we need to do, but now I don't have it.
So now that you're going to be spending TIF money,
Yes.
you probably need
Sorry, here
to
it
make
is.
sure that you're formally making motions. And we'll have to talk to the Angola attorney about whether he wants a paper trail of paper resolutions. That would say, resolution 25001, we are authorizing, we are engaging Barnes and Thornburg through this contract and authorizing the president of the Redevelopment Commission to sign on behalf of the commission.
Yes, so we need
You
a
can do that
motion to
verbally.
say that we were okay to engage Barnes and Thornburg.
I'd make a motion to spend $15,000 to engage Barnes and Thornburg.
Plus reimbursables. Is that what you said?
Second.
And then a motion that, because this request for this letter is signed by Eric.
Let me follow.
Go
through
ahead.
with that.
Yes,
Is there any
please.
discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Go ahead.
And then a motion that gives Eric the ability, they've asked for his signature as chairperson on this agreement. So
I think that ability comes with the position, I would think. I don't know.
do they they don't have to have a
You
motion
could-
to give him that ability to do that?
You more likely you put it all together
Okay.
to say,
That was
we're
what Mark said.
authorizing the
Mark said I have
contract.
the
Yes,
ability to do
Okay.
that. I thought that's what I heard.
and authorize it, yes.
Yes. Okay, good.
And again,
We'll
just getting prepared for
Confirm with the attorney.
potentially, you haven't spent a lot of money out of this TIF over the years. My guess is that DLGF or the state auditors, as they come in and now they're gonna be seeing expenses coming out of this. We just need to make sure we make a nice clean paper trail for everything.
Okay. And John seconded that motion, correct?
Form that we
Correct.
Mhm.
filled out a few months ago.
Yep.
That's still correct. But this-
It had some money in there for this, I
The
believe.
DLGF form that we had to, yeah. And it's kind of a whole separate thing, but yes, it did. We had actually
This.
appropriated
Yeah.
like 200,000 for these fees. So
Okay, this counts under that category that where we.
yes, and I had to appropriate through council, which will be on the next agenda, that 200,000 to say, hey, just FYI, council's appropriating these funds that was not initially appropriated out of redevelopment to pay legal fees, to get Marsh to get all the deeds, pull all the boundary surveys, to do everything. I don't think that we're gonna spend 200,000, but
Yeah.
I'm doing that to just cover ourselves. So Done. Okay.
We can start having appetizers and drinks and stuff at these meetings if you have that 200,000.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that.
Great.
Okay, next on the agenda.
I think that's a local public improvement.
We could argue.
We had on the agenda to recap conversation with the auditor, which did not happen, so we will move that forward at another time. And if you guys feel good about this, I'm excited. We've made a huge thing, a huge decision tonight that this has been
Great.
looming over us, so I feel
We've
good.
started, it's subject to change like
Okay.
3 or 4 times.
Listen,
We kicked it down the road far.
John,
We're
can
ready
you
to go.
just not rain on my parade a little bit, please?
You have made one of
Just about ready to get started, to get going, to do something real.
So reports wise,
Fix it.
officers, are there any reports? So, Kim is not here. Retha, you've had a lot to share. Do you have anything to share?
I do have these manuals, so Mr. Pittman brought up and Grace made some copies. If you guys want to, it is the 2024 redevelopment handbook. It's just got some good info. It really spells out a lot of things. He pointed out a couple of things to me that we had questioned, but it's in here, so
Okay.
we can grab one if anybody wants to take it
We'll
in.
set a date when you have to have that read by, probably go ahead and. set
Yeah.
that.
When's the quiz?
Next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what's our
So
next step?
those of you who are not in here, I don't know how early we discussed that, but Bill Boyer has tentatively agreed. He'll come in Friday and
To discuss the
ask a
redevelopment.
few questions probably, but then we can get him on. I don't know if we need to, if we made, I should know that through the minutes, if we made I guess the mayor makes that
The
appointment.
mayor
So
appoints him.
We don't have to do any approval on that,
Nope, absolutely not.
so.
No, that's fine. And the next step then is that I'm going to kind of type up the new special name and some word changes in this, and then I will get it to Barnes and Thornburg, as well as the TIF map. I will talk to Jason Semler about what has to happen, and we will just kind of continue moving through this and
Perfect.
the next steps.
All we're missing is a motion to,
Are we meeting the second
we will
Wednesday
need, yeah, we should
next
set
month
that.
as well?
date.
The date is April, or no, this is April. My gosh.
The 14th?
May 14th.
I will not be there at that meeting. We have a coaching track, we have a track meet that day,
Okay.
May 14th. So, I mean, you guys will get more done, so.
Depending on what ends up being on that agenda, we'll know ahead of time. I mean, I don't know exactly, but once I kind of move some of this through, we'll know what we need to do. If we need to reschedule that, we will, or Carrie will be running that meeting because she is vice chair. But if
What
it's
I-
something significant, we will.
What I'm hopeful that we'll have is a calendar. Because we will have had the conversation with
Yes.
with Barnes and Thornburg, we'll have had the conversation with Baker Tilly, and then we can start laying out the process, all the public notice requirements, all those kind of things. We can get it laid out in a nice timeline and
I love a good timeline.
And
Me too.
what would,
Makes me close to
what
that.
would you say, because those conversations have started on the allocation area? And they would like to move as fast as they possibly can, like anybody else would. So in those conversations, what would you say would be realistic on saying, hey, we can assign an agreement saying we're gonna do this, and we can do an LOI
Like a window?
for sure, right?
It
That we're
would,
gonna do it, but when would that be? Just reality. And can you do an LOI on that without being through this?
as long as they
A
understand.
letter of intent that we will
Oh,
continue
LOI.
to do this,
You can do
even if
any,
it's not, like I'm asking from
Yeah.
the city side, could they sign that and say this is,
there are so many steps that have to happen before that
Correct, but that letter
project
can
is
say-
even really.
I understand that, but that letter can say, hey, our intent is to do this, assuming all of these steps have taken place and this is,
I think if we feel comfortable that this project is gonna happen, it actually doesn't matter all that much. But I think to save time, it would make sense to establish the second allocation area during this process. If you're
No, we would, but say you have that meeting, say you meet with that, any developer that comes to town, I just know that one has been talking, right? So say Mark has a developer, says they want to come to town, do a process. And they bring it to us and they say, hey, we would like to do this, but we need to know that you're going to commit to this. We can't commit to anything right now because we're not there. But can the city, or is it us, can we write that letter of intent? Because Mark's not gonna be able to close a deal if they don't do this. What would that look like in this process? Because we're in kind of in that gray zone, waiting zone, but we don't want to turn somebody away just because we have this.
Well, once we have the timeline, that'll allow them to see what the timeline is. I will tell you, you need to have meetings so that you're done before the end of the year. So I think you actually need to be done closer to November 1st so that you have time for this to all get established and in place. Because there's a window after it's approved before it becomes effective, if that makes sense. So I think once we get that timeline laid in, I think we should shoot for November 1st to be done, to get everything in place, because you want to be
So now
able,
we're shooting for the January 2026.
yes, to have any sort of development agreement in place, negotiating what happened in
And
26.
Eric, are you asking, is there anything we can give potential inquirers before that?
Correct, that's the question.
My concern with that, Eric, would only be the economic development agreement for that allocation area. Maybe not all of them will look like this, but this one is going to have some specific things in it that have to be, that we are, as a city, are very concerned about and want to make
Absolutely.
sure that are on there. So I don't know if we can do a very general letter of interest saying, hey, just know that we are on board, that we are not backing down from this setting an allocation area here, and then the rest of that comes into play. I'm totally fine with that, if that is something that we can do for not just that project, for any project. Again, Mark has somebody coming in and we're like, listen, we're on board with this development and we feel like we can use some funds to benefit you for something, whatever it is. If we can do an LOI on that, I don't have any issue. I don't know. And maybe Mr. Pittman, our new redevelopment attorney, will.
It'd be good to ask that question.
that.
I'm not
Okay.
picking on Mark, he's a banker. I shouldn't have picked him because that makes me think he has somebody, but I could have picked on Carrie. Like, nobody who, if anybody says, hey, we've
Well,
got
somebody
somebody
calls
comes to
Rita.
town.
Yeah,
I'll pick on
Carrie.
What's that? Pick
Pick
on
on
Carrie.
Carrie, yeah.
Here.
So, but if somebody comes to Rita and says, and Rita's like, hey, we're getting ready to do this. We have the potential to help you in this way, but we can't say we can do that because we haven't finalized anything. But we would be happy to write that letter saying we're doing this. Because as a banker, that letter means something to you probably, I would assume.
Yep.
So it just gives them some more leverage if we're willing, if we as a group, not that we could do that, we'd have to approve it, but. That makes sense.
You're not gonna go have side conversations and make agreements, LOIs.
No, no, it has to come to.
Signed by Eric only.
Yeah.
Signed by Eric.
It's like an as-needed basis, just to give a lending agency some kind of assurance.
Correct. Or developer themselves.
Okay, perfect.
And once the declaratory resolution's out there and the plan is available for, it all becomes public information. And we have the timeline, I mean, you've got those resources to then share. It says, here's what we're doing, this is our plan.
And I think the benefit, hopefully,
Please come and vote.
Bill Boyer agrees to be on the board, is that his knowledge of that infrastructure, he's going to know, hey, if there's a developer looking at this, they may need some help with something. And so I think that will be a benefit of having him on the board as well.
Yep. Is our current development making any progress?
I believe that they have met with NIPSCO, getting some quotes on some things at this time. And that's the last that I've heard. So I think that they're waiting to hear that. And then depending on the cost of that and what that looks like for them, they will start initiating some steps forward. Yeah,
That could be a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
could be a big deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's very reliant on our portion of it working.
And I will also say that we have some other areas of people doing some due diligence that are in existing TIF right now.
Yeah.
So we have some other development potentially happening. Those developers or attorneys, whoever, are just doing their due diligence on that property right now and looking into things. So there are some wheels turning, some development possibly happening in some of our TIF that's already existing TIF. So
Right.
yeah. Big things.
Great.
Big things.
Any more discussion or is anybody ready to make a motion?
Do you have any
Adjourn.
questions? Are we like, are you like, why did I ever pick this meeting?
Longer
Preliminary.
than the last one that I went to. The last one that I went to lasted about 5 minutes.
Did you go to a council meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I slowed this one
So,
down. I
do
just
you
had something
understand,
else.
like,
Questions?
we probably screwed up. Do you understand what we're saying when we keep using TIF? Do you know what that is? I mean, it's been a long meeting, but if not knowing.
Yeah.
Do you understand the trade-offs?
Because if you do, you need to tell us.
Some of it I was picking up on, but some of it went completely over my head.
So the simple, and you're gonna, don't even correct me because I'll say it wrong, but the simple way to say it is we're going into properties and they're already paying taxes.
Mhm.
We're gonna stop, we're gonna say you're done, you're only paying that amount. You're not paying any more to the city or wherever it goes. We're gonna use the city. Now your property's worth more. We're gonna take all that money. This group here is gonna take all that money and decide where it goes.
If
That's really what the
if you
once it
develop a property
increases.
that's in green, the value goes up.
Okay.
The taxes you paid on the previous value keep going where they used to go. The extra taxes you pay because the value went up go to us.
And then we get to decide where do we use it. It's best for the
And
community.
we have more freedom to spend it than
Back in town.
Okay, thank you.
where it used to go.
So now you're an expert.
And since you're gonna be a civil engineer, because they have to be,
You might not
it
after
has
this
to
meeting.
go to local public improvements. Sewer, water, sidewalks, all those things you're designing as a civil engineer are things that would be eligible to be paid for with those taxes.
We're coming up with ways to earn money to pay civil engineers. How's that?
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
It's like, sign me up.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I second.
Perfect. right,
And I
we're
will stop that
Thank you.
live. Can you click play? You,
I'm sorry I was late. I actually thought I was 15 minutes early. I thought we started at 4.
I had to ask yesterday because I couldn't remember when we started. Are you able to, Rita, send
and
out
then end.
the meeting invites?